Welcome to TFP, the Theatrefolk podcast. I'm Lindsay Price, resident playwright for Theatrefolk. Hello. I hope you're well. Thanks for listening. Today, it's me off the grid, off the crutch, off the notes, answering some questions. But first, let's do Theatrefolk news. And yes, we will eventually have, actual news, new news, like what conferences you can find us at, upcoming plays, but it's August still, and since we basically run on the school year, things are just now gearing up. Although, it's really freaky to me that there are some places that start school in August and not the first Tuesday after Labor Day. What is that? School in August seems very, very wrong. Where's the tradition in an August start? Where's the feeling of sinking dread on that Labor Day, holiday, Monday? Or, was that just me? It took about 10 years for it to fully sink in for me that I don't have to go to school anymore in September. And I still have nightmares about exams. Ugh. But I digress. Okay, so let's talk about sample pages today. You can find sample pages for every one of our plays over on our website, theatrefolk.com. And why are sample pages important? Well, we don't want you to buy a play that you can't use. And sometimes descriptions, they're not enough. They're not enough to know if the play is going to be suitable for you. They're not enough to know if the set is going to work in your school. They're not enough to know about what happens on page 22. You know, we have a lot of folks who like our stuff and will grab new material, or they'll be grabbed by a title, and maybe they like the red cover, and that's the reason they pick a play. But directors, and especially high school directors, often have built-in factors that need to be met in order to choose a play. And if we could do something to make that decision process easier, we're going to do it. Like, let you read a chunk of the play before you buy. You test drive a car, test drive a play. And lastly, please always remember and don't ever forget the places in which you can find this podcast. We are, of course, at theatrefolk.com and on our Facebook page and Twitter. And you can subscribe to this podcast. You can subscribe to TFP on iTunes. Search for us through Theatrefolk. Episode 6. 10 questions. So, I do want to push myself in this format, this speaking. Hello, talking to you. How you doing? Good. I want to push myself to talk without having notes or having everything written down. The actual act of speaking off the top of my head. And I came across a 10 questions article in the most recent edition of The Dramatist, the magazine put out by the Dramatists Guild of America. You know the deal. They do them in every type of magazine for every type of topic. 10 questions for actors, 10 questions for a chef. They probably even do 10 questions for a scientist in a science journal. They are questions that in a capsulized form are supposed to help you, the reader, learn something interesting about the person answering the question. So I thought, why don't I do 10 questions from the dramatist, but not think about or prepare beforehand. I wrote down these questions about a month ago and haven't looked at them since. At one point I thought about changing a couple of the questions or cutting them because I thought they were dumb at the time, and I thought, no. I should just do them as is, off the top of my head. But, deep down inside, haven't you always wanted to do one of these? I've always kind of really wanted to. I have to admit, haven't you ever written out your Oscar speech, your Tony speech? Can't you see yourself being interviewed somewhere, maybe at the Cannes Film Festival, or, on having your play on Broadway, and you're saying all these wonderful, pithy things. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it really is just me. Anyway, here we go. Question number 1. What is your most memorable theatrical experience as a child? I have, I'm going to say that I have 2. The first one is very quick. It is, and I can't remember if it was, I think it was the Nutcracker. I have a very vivid memory of going to see the Nutcracker, but then also going to see Annie when it was at the O'Keefe Center in Toronto, which is no longer called the O'Keefe Center. It's called something else. And I think it actually has a third name. But my memory is being in the car after the show and driving around the O'Keefe Center and down past the stage door and see, it has to be the Nutcracker, because I can remember I can see girls all with their hair in tight buns. And they're all standing at the stage door, and it was like, oh, that's where the actors come out. Oh, that's very interesting to me. And I think I was about 6 or 7. So just having that real knowledge of the backstage life. And it's something that I've always loved. I've always loved behind the scenes of things, and just the whole backstage thing. And my second memorable theatrical experience is when I was I think I was 8, and I was in grade 3. And I was in a very small school, and our whole entire school went and saw a Christmas pantomime. I think I'm going to say it was at Christmas time. And the secretary of the school just happened to be in the show. And for some unknown reason, I got to go back by myself. My parents weren't with me. I'm sure they picked me up and dropped me off. But I got to go and see the show again. But I was by myself. I wasn't with my school. I remember sitting in the front row, and I remember that at intermission, an usher came up to me and must have said, "Are you so-and-so?" And I must have said yes. And they said, "Come with me. I'm going to take you backstage." So they took me backstage. It was my first look at a green room, and somebody sat me on a cube in the wings. And I got to watch the second act of this pantomime, this show, like a Christmas Total Fun show. I think it was at Christmas. And I got to watch the whole second act backstage in the wings. And I got to see the way the actors were before they went on stage, and how they joked with each other, and what they were like on stage. And there was this whole big thing where one of the characters had to sing to his girlfriend, who wasn't a very nice character. And he sang "Ain't She Sweet" to her. And it was decided, all the actors backstage, I think it must have been one of the last shows or something, and they all got together and they decided that while he's singing "Ain't She Sweet," every time that he did that, everyone backstage was going to answer "No." And I got to do that, and I got to join in, and I have a very clear memory of the actor on stage obviously not knowing that this was happening, because he turned and looked off stage as if to say, what are you doing? And of course, now I know, as an adult, this was a very horrible thing to do to the people who are acting on stage, but as an 8-year-old, was that not the most wonderful thing to ever happen to me, and probably informed my love of theater right then and there, that the whole notion of being in the wings and seeing the difference between what goes on stage and what goes on off. I have the worst memory in the world. Craig is telling me all the time, I told you this. Don't you remember this? I told you how to do this. I don't remember anything. And yet I can still see myself sitting on that cube, seeing the face of the guy when he looks backstage with this very puzzled look, as all the people, and me included, are shouting "No" every time he says, ain't she sweet? All right. Question number 1. Question number 2. Is there a production you wish you could have seen? Craig and I are really lucky in that we have been able to travel to New York, 3 or 4 times now in the past. The first time we went was in 2004, I'm going to say. I think it was 2004. And we've just been really, really lucky in the past, holy crowley, that means it's been 8 years that we've gone, maybe 4 or 5 times. And there is always a show that we wish we had seen, that we could have seen, and that we didn't. We could have seen Avenue Q. I wish we had seen that. We could have seen, Alan Cummings was in a version of the Threepenny Opera that we could have seen, and we didn't. That, and see now, this is where the questions like this always throw me, because later I will think of at least 3 other plays that I wish I had seen and didn't. I'll tell you one I saw that I wish I had never seen. I did not like Spring Awakening. As a playwright, I know, it was a hit thing. I know, it was all cool and everything. Sorry, sue me. As a playwright, I just could not stand the construction of the story. I just thought it was ridiculous. And didn't need to see What's-Her-Head topless twice. Saw it once. Didn't need to see it twice. I cannot think of another show. I think the Alan Cummings one is the one that we talk about all the time, that we wish we had seen that and never did. Okay. Who was the person who made the biggest impact on your career? Oh my goodness. You mean aside from myself, just writing and getting things done? Who has impact on my career? I've done a lot of it on my own, because nobody really had any faith in my writing abilities. I think it was more, it was more of the number of people who had no interest in my writing. I suppose I had a teacher in university who I wrote a scene for class that was done in a class project, and based on that scene, she invited me to write the, every year for the freshmen, there was a sexual awareness play. Every university has one. And because I did that, I felt confident and motivated to then write another play, which was my first play, which was Among Friends and Clutter. So I guess I have to say that if that chain of events hadn't happened, I don't know how things would have gone. You know what? I'll tell you who had the most impact on my career. There's a guy named David Cheros who works out west, and he hired me to act in a fringe festival tour. We toured Canada, and we did a little bit, teeny tiny bit in the States as well. If I hadn't learned all the ins and outs and tricks of touring a play on the fringe, seeing that I could do it myself, seeing that I could write a play, put it up, produce it, and tour the country with very limited resources, with very simple tactics. If I hadn't have seen that and learned that for myself, I never would have gone on to tour the Fringe myself for 6 years. And then the touring of the Fringe and writing those plays is really what the basis of Theatrefolk is. So there we go. That is the person who has made the biggest impact on my career and ending it up where it is today. David Cheros cast me in a play called Alexander Graham Bell, I Want to Have Your Love Child. And that was that. Number 3. Who are your heroes, writing or otherwise? I don't like the word hero because it is used so often in people who are really not heroes, like people who don't risk their life or risk anything or sacrifice for themselves. Because I think that's what I think a hero is. I think a hero is someone who puts others ahead of themselves, who sacrifices. So in that regard, I would say that Craig has an aunt who is a nun and who has spent many, many years putting other people ahead of herself, who spent 10 years. I apologize if that was, she just retired, and I apologize if I can't remember how long it is that she went to. She was in Ottawa and started from scratch a place called Carty House, which is where sort of a refuge for refugees, for those, many of the women who were staying there came there from war-torn countries, trying to find a way, some of them having to leave family behind, not knowing what happened, and She built this place from scratch. She also was a in-between place in Toronto. She was a place where people who were coming out of, I know it's not 990, Queen 999 West anymore, but out of the mental institution, a place for them to go before they got out on their own. And I just always see her as being somebody who put other people before herself. Do I have any writing heroes? I wouldn't call them heroes. No, I have no writing heroes. If you could be anyone, past, present, or fictional, who would you choose to be and why? I already have a headache, by the way. This is just question 5. I have a headache for answering these questions. Okay. If I could be anyone, past, present, or fictional. See, I get put on the spot, and then it takes a while for my brain to circle around. If I could be anyone, who would I want to be? Well, I'm always going to choose somebody fictional. Oh, I have a horrible one. I have a very horrible one. There is a series of books that I read before I go to bed at night because they are mostly mindless and very formulaic, but there's like a slew of them. Like, it's J.D. Robb. She's written about 40, I'm sure, of this particular, and she's written a gazillion other books. It's Nora Roberts writing as J.D. Robb. And she writes these series of futuristic New York based on or surrounding a cop and Eve Dallas. And they're so formulaic. But the world that has been created in these books is fascinating to me. Like the characters and the future that she's sort of put together. And I just find it very, very cool. So that would be a cool place to live. I read so much and I cannot think of another person that I would like to be. Is there anybody in the past? I don't think there's anybody in the past. It's always going to be more fun to think of fictional people. Well, the next question is, if you could have a love affair with anyone, past, present, or fictional, always go fictional, who would you choose? And of course, I would choose Mr. Darcy from Pride and Prejudice. And only because I find the miniseries with Colin Firth, and not in anything else. I don't like him in anything else I've ever seen, but I love that miniseries quite a bit. And would I like to be, you know what? It makes no sense because as a girl, I never would have been allowed, and it would have been horrible. I imagine living in England in Shakespeare's time was a nightmare. But if you didn't know any different, you wouldn't know any different. But wouldn't it be so intriguing to have been an actor in Shakespeare's company in the Lord Chamberlain's Men? Never could happen, but then I would have to be a guy. So there you go, I'm being fictional. That's what that would be. I just found that, I just did a newsletter on Elizabethan England and just found that whole time so fascinating. It probably really was not fun in any way, shape, or form, but to have just the whole transition of theater from the beginning of the era to the end of the era. I think that being in Shakespeare's plays, the first productions of them, I think that would have been wicked. So that's what I would want to be. Okay, love affair. I don't even know his first name. Mr. Darcy. Anyone else who I would like to have a love affair with? I don't actually ever think about that in those terms. I'm pretty happy, so I don't really need to have fictional love affairs. When you sit down to write, what must you have with you in the room? Kleenex? Ice not a lot. Something to drink, which is usually in the wintertime a pot of tea. I am so tired of summer. I would like summer to be over so that it can be tea season again. I think that we mostly keep our house cold so that Craig can drink coffee and I can drink tea or water or Diet Coke. So I have something to drink. I have my laptop on my lap. And then I also have a notebook and a gazillion pens nearby, because sometimes if I'm working on something, if I need to deconstruct it, it's always better for me to do it with pen and paper. This is question number 8. When you are in despair with a piece of work, how do you maneuver out of that? When you're in a despair with a piece of work, how do you maneuver out of it? I change locations. I almost always associate despair in really, it's never despair. It's writing. I don't have anything to be despairing over. If I am writing and it's not working, I will change location. Sometimes I will go and I will sit on the bed. Sometimes I will go, we have a room upstairs, and I will sit on the floor. Sometimes I will go to a coffee shop. I change location. And I also change mediums. If it's computer that I'm working on and it's not going, I'll go to pen and paper, or vice versa. Going for a walk. Also, there's so many times that if I have a problem with a play, if I just go for a walk and I just sort of let things run around in my head and just let it circle and circle and circle and circle, I will go, hey, I figured that out. If you hadn't become a dramatist, what profession would you have chosen? Not so much anymore. There was a time period probably a year ago where the original CSI was on every day at a certain period of time where I could watch it. Wonder if Craig was doing a show. No, he wasn't doing a show last year. Whatever it was, must have been during the day. But I used to watch CSI Vegas, the Vegas one, just religiously until, and I'll tell you when I stopped watching. I stopped watching when, it's been a long time, so I don't even remember their names. One of the characters got into trouble in real life and got kicked off the show, and then he got killed off on the show, and that was sort of it for me. I didn't watch any of the episodes after that, but like the first 5-6 years, I have seen all those a number of times. And if I wasn't a dramatist and I didn't have the kind of imagination that would keep me up at night, I think being a forensic scientist and if I had any aptitude for science at all, and if I didn't, if I actually took science in school, all the factors that make this job completely impossible. But I think it's fascinating to look at a crime scene and go, okay, the blood splatter goes this way, so that means when so-and-so said that they fell, that couldn't have happened. Or to look at fibers, or to look at the jigsaw. It's the jigsaw puzzle pieces that all fit together to tell a story. And I just find it fascinating. And yes, I know that CSI is not real, but so what? Hey, number 10. I'm so excited. This is it. Okay. I can't believe how tiring this is. Okay. Which of your works is your favorite and why? They are all my children. They are all my favorites. People ask me this question all the time, and it's hard to say. First of all, you have to come, when somebody asks you this question, you must have an answer. It is not fair to not have an answer. Sometimes they're asking because they're bored, but sometimes they're asking because they want to read something that's meaningful to you, to me. Sometimes I ask because they can't make a decision. And it's really unfair to say to them, oh, I don't have a favorite. Because everybody has favorites, right? Even though when they say they don't have things that are their favorites, everybody has something that means something to them. And that's really what it's all about. So, sometimes it depends on the day. Mostly my favorite play is the play that's in my head and that I'm working on because I'm living with it all the time. I'm just finished a draft on my typewriter play, and it's just like, it's kind of like rocket ships and fireworks going off in my head as I'm thinking and thinking and thinking, and it's very exciting. So it's very meaningful to me right now. Sometimes, there's a play that's, if they're standing at the table and we have a lot of a certain play, I'm like, all right, that's my favorite play. And I can always come up with a reason, because it's so sad to say it, but really is true that they don't get published unless I feel something, unless they're meaningful to me. I don't publish my stuff that I only sort of semi-care about. And there's lots of different reasons why I care about something. I care about plays that were very challenging to write, or where I put out a thesis and explored it and was successful. Oh, there's no feeling like doing something challenging and that you find that it's successful. And sometimes on a certain day, that is what is meaningful to me. I suppose in the end, what I often say is that if the challenging play If when I tried to do something and it worked, that's always going to be meaningful to me. And of course, my first play, Among Friends and Clutter, is always going to have just the most special place in my heart, because I still can't believe that play was done in 1991. And to this day, there are productions going on. And that to me means that the play resonates. And that is what we're all striving for as writers, to have our work resonate and to have our work resonate long after its first production. Okay, that was 10 questions. I hope that was interesting. I feel that I wish I had been able to sit down and think about some of these answers, because I might have given something that was more meaningful as opposed to just trying to think off the top of my head. However, I think that means that the answers maybe are more instinctual. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. I thought I really wanted to cut the love affairs question, because it's like, I don't know. I like when I read, I love worlds. Like, I love books and that create worlds, and I love sort of jumping into those worlds. I don't necessarily want to have myself in those worlds. I wonder if it's because I spend a lot of my time creating worlds myself, that I don't have that side to me where I want to go live in a book. I don't know. That's where we're going to end. That's it. That's all. Take care, my friends. Take care.